Alex never acted like he was rich. Even though his dad owned Atlantic Sky Airlines, one of the biggest air companies in the country, he dressed in regular clothes, usually just jeans, sneakers, and a plain t-shirt. His father, Raymond, had taught him that real respect wasn't about showing off money, but about how you treated others. People will judge you by your actions, not your bank account, Raymond would always say. He had started with nothing, working as a baggage handler 30 years ago before slowly building his company. Now he was worth billions, but still remembered where he came from. Alex had just finished business school last week. He could have easily walked into a top job at his father's company, with a big office and people calling him sir. But that wasn't his style. Instead, he had a different plan, one his father didn't know about yet. He wanted to learn the business from the ground up, just like his dad had. Start as a ticket agent, then move to customer service, maybe work on the ramp loading luggage. Alex believed the only way to really understand how to run an airline was to experience every part of it first. Today, he was flying home to surprise his dad with this plan. Alex didn't tell anyone who he was when he booked his economy ticket from Chicago to Atlanta. He stood in line like everyone else, waited at the gate like everyone else, and carried his own bag, a simple backpack that held his laptop and a change of clothes. A few people bumped into him as they rushed to board, not even noticing him. Alex didn't mind. He actually enjoyed being treated like a normal person. Growing up, he'd seen how people changed when they found out who his father was, suddenly becoming extra nice or asking for favors. It felt fake. As he found his seat, 23B, a middle seat near the wing, he helped an older woman put her bag in the overhead bin. She thanked him with a warm smile, not having any idea that the polite young man could have bought the entire plane if he wanted to. Alex settled in and pulled out his worn paperback book. It was about leadership and treating employees with respect, lessons he hoped to use someday when he eventually took over the family business. But he wanted to earn that right, not just have it handed to him. Looking around, he noticed how diverse the passengers were, families heading on vacation, business people typing on laptops, college students with headphones on. This was the real world, and these were the customers his father's airline served every day. The flight attendants began their pre-flight checks, walking down the aisle. One of them, a woman with a tight smile, kept looking at the passengers like they were causing her problems just by being there. Alex watched her, making a mental note about customer service. You can tell a lot about a company by how its employees treat people when they think nobody important is watching. Little did anyone know that the most important person in the entire airline was sitting right there in economy class, in his faded jeans, watching everything. Alex took a deep breath and smiled to himself. This was going to be an interesting flight home. What he didn't realize was just how interesting things were about to get, and how one interaction was about to change company policy forever. The plane was almost ready for takeoff. Alex had settled into his seat, his backpack tucked neatly under the seat in front of him. He was looking through a magazine when a shadow fell across his lap. "Excuse me, sir," said a voice with a sharp edge to it. "That bag needs to go in the overhead compartment." Alex looked up to see the flight attendant he noticed earlier. Her name tag read Patricia. She was pointing at his backpack with a frown on her face. "Oh, I think it fits perfectly under the seat," Alex said with a polite smile. "It's within the size limits." Patricia's face tightened. "I'm going to need you to put it overhead. It's blocking the walkway." Alex glanced down. His bag wasn't sticking out at all. The businessman across the aisle had a briefcase that took up more space, and the teenager in front had a giant school backpack halfway into the aisle. Neither of them was being asked to move their bags. "I'm sorry, but it's not blocking anything," Alex said calmly. "The airline website says bags this size can stay under the seat." The man sitting next to Alex, a middle-aged guy in a golf shirt, looked uncomfortable. "Hey buddy," he whispered, "maybe just do what she says." But Patricia was already raising her voice. "Sir, when a flight attendant gives you an instruction, you need to follow it. That's federal law." People nearby started to look over. Alex felt his cheeks getting warm, not from embarrassment, but from the unfairness of it all. He'd been on hundreds of flights. He knew the rules. "I understand that," he said, keeping his voice even. "But I also know my rights as a passenger. My bag meets all the requirements. I'd be happy to show you the measurements I've." Are you refusing to comply? Patricia cut him off. Her voice had gotten even louder. An older woman across the aisle spoke up. He's not doing anything wrong. Why are you singling him out? Patricia ignored her. I need to get the lead flight attendant. As she walked away, the businessman next to Alex shook his head. Man, what's her problem? Your bag is fine. A moment later, Patricia returned with another flight attendant, a tall man named Greg, according to his name tag. What seems to be the issue? Greg asked, but his tone made it clear he'd already decided who was at fault. Before Alex could speak, Patricia jumped in. This passenger is refusing to follow crew instructions about proper baggage storage. Alex took a deep breath. That's not true. My bag fits perfectly under the seat. It meets all size requirements. I'm just trying to understand why I'm being singled out when other passengers have the same setup. Greg looked at Alex with cold eyes. Maybe you'd be more comfortable flying on another airline if you can't follow our rules. The comment hung in the air. Several passengers exchanged shocked glances. The implication was clear to everyone. Excuse me, Alex said quietly. What exactly do you mean by that? A woman 2 rows back stood up. I'm recording this, she announced, holding up her phone. This is completely inappropriate. Greg's face flushed. No recordings allowed during flight preparation. We haven't left the gate, the woman shut back. And I want to document how you're treating this young man differently than everyone else. More passengers began to speak up. Yeah, leave him alone. His bag is fine. This is ridiculous. Alex remained calm, though his heart was pounding. He reached for his own phone and began recording too. I'd like your names and employee numbers, please, he said to both flight attendants. Greg's expression changed to one of alarm. I'm getting the captain. As he stormed off, Patricia stayed behind, arms crossed. The airplane had become uncomfortably quiet, with all eyes on the situation. You know, Alex said quietly to her, my father always taught me to treat everyone with respect, no matter who they are. That's a lesson worth remembering. She had no idea just how important that lesson was about to become. The tension in the airplane grew thicker by the minute. Other passengers were whispering to each other, some shaking their heads in disbelief. A few had their phones out, recording everything. Alex sat quietly, trying to keep his breathing steady. This is crazy, said the woman who'd first started recording. I've flown hundreds of times and never seen anything like this. A flight attendant named Tina, who hadn't been involved yet, walked by and noticed the commotion. Unlike Patricia and Greg, she stopped with genuine concern. Is everything okay here? She asked, looking from Alex to the passengers around him. No, it's not, said the older woman across the aisle. Your colleagues are harassing this young man for absolutely no reason. His bag is perfectly fine under the seat. Tina looked confused and a bit embarrassed. I'm sorry to hear that. Let me see what's going on. But before she could do anything, Greg returned with the captain. The captain, a grey-haired man with a stern face, didn't even look at Alex before speaking. What's the problem here? He asked Greg, completely ignoring Alex. This passenger refuses to follow crew instructions and is disrupting the flight, Greg said, pointing at Alex. Several passengers are now recording, which is against policy. The captain finally turned to Alex. Sir, my flight attendants tell me you're being uncooperative. I need you to comply immediately or you'll be removed from this aircraft. Alex sat up straighter. Captain, with all due respect, I haven't broken any rules. My bag meets size requirements for underseat storage. I'm being singled out when other passengers have similar or larger bags. I'd like to understand why. Don't question my crew's judgment, the captain snapped. This is my aircraft and my decision is final. A businessman in a suit stood up from a few rows ahead. Captain, I'm an executive who flies weekly. This passenger has done nothing wrong. Your crew is creating a problem where none exists. The captain's face reddened. Sir, please remain seated. No, this isn't right, said another passenger, a college professor type with glasses. We're all witnesses. This young man is being treated unfairly. More voices joined in support of Alex. The captain looked increasingly uncomfortable as he realized many passengers were watching and recording. Security has been called, he announced firmly. This disruption needs to end. Alex felt a mix of emotions: anger, hurt, but also a strange sense of calm. He'd experienced unfair treatment before, but never so publicly, never so blatantly, and never on his father's airline. "Captain," Alex said calmly, "before you make your final decision, I'd like to make a phone call. It will only take a minute." "You can make all the calls you want once you're off my aircraft," the captain replied coldly. 2 security officers appeared at the front of the plane. The entire cabin was silent now, watching as they made their way down the aisle toward Alex's seat. "This is what happens when you don't follow the rules," Patricia said loudly enough for nearby Rose to hear. The older woman across from Alex spoke up again. "The only people breaking rules here are you flight attendants. This is discrimination, plain and simple." The security officers reached Alex's row. "Sir, we need you to gather your belongings and come with us," one of them said. Alex nodded. With dignity, he stood up, grabbed his backpack, the very backpack that had supposedly caused all this trouble, and followed the security officers. As he walked down the aisle, something unexpected happened. Passengers began to stand in silent support. First one, then another, until at least 20 people were standing, many still recording with their phones. "We see what happened here," a woman called out. Alex felt touched by the support from strangers. As he reached the front of the plane, he pulled out his phone. "I need to make one call," he told the security officers. "It's important." One of them nodded, surprisingly respectful compared to the flight crew. Alex dialed a number he rarely used, his father's direct line. As the phone rang, he looked back at the aircraft full of watching passengers and the crew who had no idea what was about to happen. "Dad? It's me," he said when the call connected. "There's something at the airport you need to see." Alex walked through the jet bridge with the security officers beside him. He wasn't angry anymore, just disappointed. His father had built this airline on respect and good service, yet here he was, being kicked off one of its planes for no good reason. "You okay, sir?" asked the younger security officer. His tone was much kinder than the flight crews had been. "I'm fine," Alex replied, just surprised by how things went down back there. They reached the gate area where a small crowd had gathered, curious about what was happening. Some passengers from the plane had followed them out, still recording everything on their phones. "I'm staying right here until someone explains why this man was removed," said the older woman who had defended Alex on the plane. "This isn't right." A gate agent looked confused and nervous. "What's going on?" Before anyone could answer, a man in a crisp suit came running down the terminal. He was breathing hard, like he'd sprinted across the entire airport. When he saw Alex, his face went pale. "Mr. Johnson," he gasped, struggling to catch his breath. "I just got a call. Is everything okay?" The security officers looked confused. "You know this passenger?" The man in the suit straightened his tie nervously. "This is Raymond Johnson's son." One of the security officers raised his eyebrows. "Raymond Johnson, the owner of the airline." The suited man nodded quickly. "Yes. Atlantic Sky's founder and CEO." He turned to Alex. "Mr. Johnson, I'm Thomas Wells, the regional director. I can't tell you how sorry I am about this misunderstanding." Alex kept his face neutral. "It wasn't a misunderstanding, Mr. Wells. I was singled out and removed from that plane when I broke no rules." Wells looked even more uncomfortable. "Let me fix this immediately. I'll have the crew apologize and we'll get you back on board." "No," Alex said firmly. "I don't want to fly with that crew. And I don't want special treatment just because of who my father is. That's not how this works." The captain and Patricia had now appeared at the gate, likely called by someone who realized the massive mistake they'd made. Their faces showed shock as they approached and heard the conversation. "Did he say Johnson?" "That's in Raymond Johnson," Patricia whispered loudly to the captain. The captain's face had lost all its color. He stepped forward. "Mr. Johnson, there's been a terrible mistake. If you'd allow me to—" "Captain," Alex cut him off. "The mistake wasn't kicking off the owner's son. The mistake was kicking off any passenger who wasn't breaking any rules. Would you have treated everyone on that plane the same way you treated me?" The question hung in the air. The captain had no answer. More passengers had gathered around now, watching the scene unfold. Some were nodding in agreement with Alex's words. "I'll take another flight," Alex said to Wells. But I'd like all these passengers who stood up for me to receive vouchers for their inconvenience. And I want a meeting with senior management about what happened here today." Wells nodded quickly. "Of course, right away." Alex's phone rang again. He looked down. It was his father. He stepped away from the group to answer. "Dad, you won't believe what just happened on Flight 772, he said. "I'm already hearing about it," his father replied, his voice serious. "Someone sent me a video. I'm on my way to the airport now." Alex sighed. "Dad, you don't have to come down here." "Yes, I do," Raymond said firmly. "Not just as your father, but as the CEO. This isn't the airline I built." As Alex ended the call, he saw the captain and Patricia being led away by Wells, both looking like they'd seen a ghost. The other passengers were being helped by gate agents who suddenly couldn't do enough for them. A young girl approached Alex shyly. "My mom says you own this airline. Is that true?" Alex smiled gently. "No, I don't. But someday I hope to help run it. And when I do, I'll remember what happened today." He looked around at the terminal, at the people watching, at the crew members who had treated him so poorly. His father would be here soon, and together they would turn this terrible experience into something that might actually make a difference. Half an hour later, Raymond Johnson walked through the airport doors. He didn't look like what most people would expect from a billionaire airline owner. He wore a simple blue button-down shirt with no tie and khaki pants. The only hint of his status was the way airport staff straightened up when they saw him, nodding respectfully as he passed. Alex was waiting in a private lounge where Wells had taken him. When his father walked in, Alex stood up, suddenly feeling like a kid again. "Dad," he started, "I didn't mean to cause trouble." Raymond waved his hand. "You didn't cause anything." His voice was calm but serious. "I've seen the videos. 3 different passengers emailed them to me directly." Wells stood nervously in the corner. "Mr. Johnson, I can't express how sorry we are about this incident." Raymond barely glanced at him. "Where's the crew now?" "In the staff room," Wells replied quickly. "Flight 772 has been delayed until we can sort this out." Raymond nodded. "Good. I want to talk to them." He turned to Alex. "But first, tell me everything that happened from your perspective." Alex told the whole story, not leaving anything out. How Patricia had singled him out. How Greg had suggested he fly another airline. How the captain hadn't even listened to his side. When he finished, Raymond was quiet for a long moment. "That's not how I built this company," he finally said. "That's not who we are." "What are you going to do?" Alex asked. "What would you do?" Raymond asked back. "You're the one who experienced this." Alex thought about it. Most people would say fire them all, make an example of them. "Is that what you want?" Alex shook his head. "No, firing them doesn't solve the bigger problem. It just pushes it somewhere else." He paused. "I think they need to understand what they did wrong, really understand it." Raymond smiled slightly, proud of his son's wisdom. "I agree." He turned to Wells. "Let's go talk to them." The staff room was dead silent when they walked in. The captain, Patricia, and Greg sat at a table, looking like they were waiting for execution. Several other staff members stood around, including Tina, the flight attendant who had shown concern. "You all know who I am," Raymond said, his voice firm but not angry. "And this is my son, Alex." No one spoke. Patricia looked like she might cry. "I could fire all of you right now," Raymond continued. "That would be the easy solution." The captain stared at the floor. "We understand, sir." "No, I don't think you do," Raymond said. "Because this isn't about who my son is. This is about how you treated a passenger, any passenger." Alex stepped forward. "I just want to know why. Why did you single me out when my bag was following all the rules?" Patricia couldn't meet his eyes. "I don't know," she whispered. I thought you looked like you might be trouble. Because of how I look." Alex asked quietly. The room was silent. The answer was clear. "Here's what's going to happen," Raymond said. "This flight will continue today with a different crew. You 3. He pointed to the captain, Patricia, and Greg, are suspended with pay for 2 weeks. They looked up, surprised it wasn't worse. "During those 2 weeks," Raymond continued, "you'll go through our new training program. The one we haven't launched yet. The one about unconscious bias and treating all passengers with dignity. and you'll help us improve it based on what happened today. The captain spoke up. Sir, I want to apologize directly to your son. My name is Alex, Alex interrupted. Not sir's son. Just like on that plane, I was just Alex, a regular passenger who deserved the same respect as everyone else. Tina, who had tried to help on the plane, stepped forward. Mr. Johnson, Alex, I'm sorry I didn't do more. I knew something wasn't right. Raymond looked at her. Standing by when you see something wrong is its own problem. That's part of what we need to fix. He turned to address everyone. I built this airline because I love flying. I love bringing people together. Every passenger who steps on our planes trusts us with their safety, their comfort, and their dignity. Today, we broke that trust. Alex watched his father with pride. This was why Raymond Johnson was respected by everyone who worked for him, not feared, but truly respected. We're going to do better, Raymond said. Starting today, starting with you. As they left the staff room, Alex realized something important. This wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning of something new. 2 weeks later, Alex sat in a large meeting room at Atlantic Sky Airlines headquarters. The room was filled with people from all levels of the company: flight attendants, pilots, gate agents, baggage handlers, and executives. His father stood at the front, waiting for everyone to settle down. Thank you all for coming, Raymond began. Most of you have heard about what happened on Flight 772 2 weeks ago. Some of you have seen the videos that went viral online. Alex shifted in his seat. The videos had indeed gone viral. Millions of people had watched them, leaving thousands of angry comments. Many called for the crew to be fired. Some people even threatened to boycott the airline. I could have handled this privately, Raymond continued. But that would have been a mistake. What happened wasn't just about my son or those particular crew members. It was about our whole company and what we stand for. The room was quiet. In the front row sat the captain, Patricia, and Greg, the crew who had removed Alex from the plane. They looked different now, humbler, more thoughtful. For the past 2 weeks, these crew members have been working with our training department, Raymond explained. Not as punishment, but to help us all learn and grow. Today, they're going to share what they've learned. Patricia stood up first. Her hands were shaking slightly as she faced the room. 2 weeks ago, I thought I was just doing my job, she began. But when I was asked why I singled out Alex, I couldn't answer. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying it in my head, wondering why I approached him and not others with similar bags. She took a deep breath. During training, I learned about something called unconscious bias. It means we make judgments about people without even realizing it. I didn't think I was that kind of person, but my actions showed otherwise. Next, Greg stood up. I've been flying for 20 years. I always thought I treated everyone the same. But watching that video of myself, hearing how I spoke to Alex, suggesting he fly another airline, I didn't recognize that person. That's not who I want to be. The captain was last. He looked directly at Alex as he spoke. I failed as a leader that day, he said simply. I didn't assess the situation. I didn't listen. I just backed my crew automatically. A good captain needs to be fair and consider all sides. I didn't do that. Alex was surprised by their honesty. He had expected excuses or half-hearted apologies. This felt genuine. Raymond handed the floor to a woman named Diane from the training department. For the past 2 weeks, we've been developing a new training program with input from these crew members and outside experts. Every employee at Atlantic Sky will go through this training in the coming months. She clicked a button, and a presentation appeared on the screen behind her. We're calling it Sky for Everyone. It's about making sure every passenger feels welcome and respected on our planes, regardless of who they are. Alex listened as Diane explained the program. It included real-world scenarios, discussions about unconscious bias, and practical tools for airline staff to check their assumptions. The crew from Flight 772 had helped create it, sharing their perspectives on what went wrong and how they could have handled the situation differently. When the presentation ended, Raymond spoke again. Some people expected me to fire these employees. That would have been easy. But firing people doesn't fix the problem, it just moves it somewhere else. Real change comes from learning and growing together. He gestured to Alex. My son has something he'd like to share as well. Alex hadn't planned to speak, but he stood up anyway. When this happened, I was angry, he admitted, not just because I was treated unfairly, but because this isn't what my dad's airline stands for. We can all make mistakes. What matters is what we learn from them. He looked at Patricia, Greg, and the captain. Thank you for your honesty today. That took courage. As the meeting ended and people began to leave, an older flight attendant approached Alex. I've been flying for 30 years, she said. Things like this have happened before, but they were always swept under the rug. This is the first time I've seen a company actually try to learn from it. Your father built something special here. Alex nodded, and we're going to make it even better. Outside the window, an Atlantic Sky plane took off into the blue. Alex watched it climb, carrying hundreds of passengers from all walks of life. He hoped that someday, every one of them would truly feel they belonged in that sky. 6 months later, Alex stood in the terminal of Atlanta International Airport, watching passengers board an Atlantic Sky flight. He wore a simple blue uniform with a name tag that read Alex, Customer Experience Team. No mention of his last name. No hint that his father owned the airline. After the incident, Alex had surprised everyone by sticking to his original plan. He wanted to learn the business from the ground up, working alongside regular employees. Today marked his first day in customer experience after 3 months in baggage handling and 2 in ticketing. Ready for your first day at the gate? Asked his supervisor, Carla. Alex nodded, more than ready. As they approached Gate B12, Alex noticed something new. Above the gate hung a sign with the words Sky for Everyone and the airline's new logo, a sky filled with diverse paper airplanes flying together. The airline had changed in the past 6 months. The training program that started with just 3 crew members had now been completed by every employee. Customer satisfaction scores were up. Employee morale had improved, and applications from diverse candidates had increased by 40%. But the biggest surprise had come from Patricia. There she is, Carla said, pointing to a woman talking with passengers near the boarding area. Patricia looked different now, more confident but also more approachable. After completing her training, she had asked to become part of the new program as a trainer herself. Now she traveled to different airports, sharing her story with other staff members. It's the most powerful part of the training, Carla explained. When she tells people how she almost threw away a 20-year career because of unconscious bias, it really hits home. Alex watched as Patricia helped an elderly man with his boarding pass, genuinely smiling as she pointed him toward the gate. She hadn't noticed Alex yet. "Excuse me," said a voice behind them. Alex turned to see a woman with 2 young children. "My kids are flying alone to see their grandmother. They're a little nervous. Could you help us?" "Of course," Alex said with a smile. He knelt down to the children's level. "First time flying alone?" The little boy nodded, wide-eyed. "Well, you're in for an adventure," Alex said. "Let me show you how it works." As Alex walked the family through the process, explaining each step simply so the children could understand, Patricia looked over and recognized him. Her face showed surprise, then a small smile. When the family moved on, she approached. "I didn't know you were working here now," she said. "Started in baggage handling a few months ago," Alex replied. "Just moved to customer experience today." Patricia nodded. "You could have started at the top, you know." "As an executive." Alex shrugged. "That's not the point. How can I lead if I don't understand every part of the experience?" They were interrupted by an announcement that boarding would begin soon. Patricia needed to return to her post, but she paused. "I never properly thanked you," she said. "For what?" Alex asked. "For not demanding I be fired, for giving me a chance to learn from my mistake." She looked him in the eye. Not everyone would have done that. As Patricia walked away, Alex's phone buzzed with a text from his father. "How's the first day going?" "Good," Alex typed back. "Just ran into Patricia." Raymond's response came quickly. "Awkward." "Actually, no," Alex replied. "Progress." The gate area was filling up now. Families with children, business travelers, elderly couples, college students with backpacks. Every type of person, all about to share the same journey together. Carla handed Alex a microphone. "Want to make the boarding announcement?" Alex took a deep breath and pressed the button. "Good afternoon, everyone. This is Alex from Atlantic Sky Airlines. We're ready to begin boarding flight 447 to Chicago. We welcome all our passengers and thank you for choosing to fly with us today. As people began to line up, an older gentleman approached Alex. "You look familiar," he said. "Have we met before?" Alex smiled. "Maybe. I've been working here for a few months now." The man shook his head. "No, I remember now. You were on that video, the passenger who got kicked off. And now you work for them? That's surprising." "I'm exactly where I need to be," Alex replied, "helping to make sure what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone else." As the last passengers boarded, Alex looked out the huge windows at the plane on the tarmac. One day he would help run this airline. But for now, he was learning its heart, one passenger at a time. Every person who stepped onto that plane deserved the same respect, the same welcome. Every single one belonged in that sky. And Alex was going to make sure they knew it.